The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Night of History. It's going to be a fun night, and I'm so glad to see everyone here. The only thing I ask tonight is, while the presentations are being made, I'm not sure if this applies to any of the other speakers, but if you could please hold your applause to the very end. It mainly applies for what I'm doing, but that would be much appreciated. And now I'd like to introduce, and if also, another thing, if you wouldn't mind just shutting your cell phones on low, that would be appreciated too. And I'd like to introduce our State Grange President, Corey Spence, and he's going to make the introduction of our honored guests. Corey?
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you. It's good to be here. Before I introduce everyone, I'd like to just tell you about some of the exciting events we have coming up. This Saturday from 10 to 4 at Mount Wachusett Community College in Gardner is our Agriculture and Action Expo, the second one we're having. There'll be a food truck, a farmer's market, 40 or so tables of vendors.
It's very much a pleasure to be here this evening. I haven't been down in this area for quite a while, and it's nice to see some familiar faces. I have brought items from the State Grange Museum, primarily reflecting either Easton Grange or Harmony of Easton Grange. Also, anyone would like to peruse, I have a binder back here which has is information on the history as well as pictures of the library museum, as well outside and inside, showing all the displays. And members, as long as you give advance notice, are always welcome to come out and see the museum. And we appreciate the Grangers that do donate to the Penny a Day Fund, which goes towards the upkeep of the library. Now, I'm just going to give a little history of how the Grange started. After the American Civil War ended in 1865, life for farmers in the United States was difficult. A large amount of southern farmland had been destroyed because it was used as battlefields during the war. In the West and the Great Plains, farmers were struggling with the cost of shipping their goods to market in the East, where the majority of Americans lived. A group of men with interests in agriculture who were involved in government work in Washington, D.C., saw a need to unify farmers and address their many concerns. In 1867, these men assembled to organize the Order of Patrons of Husbandry, a name which means supporters of agriculture. The organization became commonly known as the Grange, which is derived from the Latin word for grain and was a term commonly used for farms. Oliver Kelly is generally credited as the founder of the order. He was born in Boston in 1826 and moved west in search of land and opportunity when he was 21. Kelly settled in the Minnesota Territory and became involved in real estate and territorial government. He started his own farm and also helped other farmers succeed in their trade. He believed that the key to success was through implementation of new farming techniques and using the most current scientific methods. In 1852, Kelly formed the Benton County Agricultural Society as an organization for farmers to share information and assist one another. The success of this group led Kelly to develop a national organization with the same purpose. During the Civil War, Kelly became a clerk for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, and also served as a correspondent for his local paper back home, the St. Paul Daily Press. After the war, he was sent to the South to collect statistical information on the condition of agriculture in the region. Many Southerners were reluctant to trust a Yankee. However, he used his standing as a member of the Masons to earn the trust of many locals. Kelly relocated to Washington in 1866 and began working with colleagues to develop a plan for a national farmers organization. This group became known as the Seven Founders of the Order. The group was also assisted by Caroline Hall, Kelly's niece. Hall's contributions led to women being accepted as full voting members in the Grange from the very beginning, which was long before the country saw that. The first meeting to organize the National Grange was held on November 15, 1867, and the organization was officially organized with the election of officers on December 4th of that year. Following the organization of the National Grange, Kelly traveled the country, working to organize local Granges, the first of which was Potomac Grange No. 1 in Washington, D.C., which was organized on January 8, 1868. The Grange faced many challenges in its early days. Southern Granges were reluctant to admit black members because of the strong post-war racism that existed there. Some members felt more militant actions were needed to address the issues faced by farmers, but the Grange did not support this. Potential members were unsure of the goals and benefits of joining because of the secrecy that surrounded the Grange. In the 1870s, the Grange began to see some progress in establishing itself across the country. By 1873, 31 states had subordinate Granges, and 22 state Granges had been organized. The state Grange in Massachusetts was organized on December 4, 1873. By that time, 18 subordinate Granges had formed in Massachusetts. These Granges were located in Greenfield, Deerfield, Northfield, Boston, Acton, Ware, Groton, Conway, Barry, South Deerfield, Monson, Harvard, Danvers, Pittsfield, Hadley, Amherst, Cheshire, and Palmer. Organizing deputies were sent to establish subordinate Granges in towns across the Commonwealth. By 1875, the number of subordinate Granges in Massachusetts hit 100. The National Grange reported 850,000 members nationwide in that year. This rapid growth proved problematic for the young organization. It was not prepared for such fast growth, and members were finding that the benefits they were promised were not actually available to them. Cooperative stores designed to help members sell their farm goods were often poorly run and were opposed by local tradesmen. The country was also facing challenging economic times when the Grange was first organized. The nation was in the midst of an economic recession from 1873 to 1879. Because of the issues facing the Grange, membership plummeted. They were determined to make their beloved Grange persevere through the challenges. They worked hard to address the challenges faced by the Grange, and by 1880, the Grange began to grow again. Grange membership in Massachusetts grew from 1880 to 1949, with a slight dip during the Great Depression and World War II. And then in 1949, membership peaked at over 51,000. And unfortunately, we're not looking at numbers like that today, but hopefully with the different programs that the State Grange is offering and promoting, that will encourage more people to get involved with our organization. I would like to thank Easton Grange for inviting the historical committee to come to this meeting, and it's a pleasure, and I wish Easton Grange the best of luck in the future. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Okay. And feel free, after everything is done, to look, what is displayed here. And there's also, there's a book back here that shows.
I'm happy to say a few words about the founding of our Grange and a couple of our more illustrious members, 3, and then a little bit about what we're doing. And having done the research, I'm very proud of our Grange. The history that you just heard is absolutely fantastic. There was definitely an early period in the Grange's history where it was, if not a political organization, at least one that was really trying to represent farmers. But by the time the Grange movement reached Easton, they had decided that the best way to honor the traditions of agriculture was to promote rural traditions. What does that mean? Well, agricultural fairs and supporting young people and all of those wonderful things. So our Grange, which was organized in 1892, was founded to honor the tradition of agriculture. And it was open to everybody in Easton, and whether they were from down in the Furnace Village area or whether they were up here in Northeastern or even further up in Unionville, where our Grange Hall is located. And later, Easton was able to support 2 Granges. So that was a really important thing. When the Grange got started, they were meeting in what was called the Band Hall up on Washington Street, just a little bit north of where the Beanery is located today. They paid $1 a meeting to rent a hall, and did very, very well. They organized in 1892, and in 1893, the National Master of the Grange came and spent an entire day with the Easton Grange, who was doing a summertime picnic. So that was pretty honorable because we didn't have a Grange Hall at that time. Many Granges in those early days didn't have a Grange Hall, but we were thinking about it. And what happened was the very next year, in 1894, the organization decided to build a Grange Hall. They purchased the property where the thrift store, as you all know it, it's the Grange Hall, was located on the corner of Elm and Washington. And they set up a corporation to build the hall. And the corporation, of course, had almost all the same members as the Grange. But that was a way of limiting the liability of the Grange in case something went wrong with paying off the Grange Hall. And in 1897, they did take out a mortgage on the hall, which they didn't pay off until the 1940s. So the potential for having things go wrong was there. The hall was built by George DeWitt, who was the prominent builder in town at the time. And it was based on a very simple design. We think today, after the thrift store has been up on that second floor, that the hall wasn't built quite for thrift stores. It was built for Grange meetings. And the second floor, of course, has a stage where many performances were held in the olden days. After the hall was built, the corporation and the Grange united and have been together ever since, so you can't tell the difference anymore. The Grange itself was scheduled to cost no more than $2,500, that big building, $2,500, and Mr. DeWitt brought it in at $1,700, so it didn't cost very much. You also have to remember that the Grange was getting started nationally during the Railroad Depression of 1873, sorry, for those of us who owned railroads back then. But in 1893, we had another Great Depression, and this was the worst depression between the beginning of the country and the Great Depression of 1929. So it took quite a bit of work to get the hall done, and lots of people participated. There were 30 charter members, and it grew very, very quickly because it was one of the few social organizations that were available in town, unless you were Swedish, and then the Swedish groups requires you to know a little Swedish. Interesting things. The hall was not fitted out with electricity to begin with. It was not fitted out with a furnace until the first couple of years were over. And the most important thing is there were no restrooms at the hall. There was a place outside where you could go. Certain stipulations have caused us problems forever. One of the stipulations was that the foundation had to be made out of stone rubble. And we've discovered that after 100 years, stone rubble leaks like crazy. So one of the last projects that we've done is try to seal up the basement. Okay. Eventually, the group was able to take care of many things. In the 50s, the aluminum siding was put on the new roof. Well, actually, the roof previous to the one we have now was put in 1976. So think about it. The original roof went from 1894 to 1976 with repairs, but not replacement. It was replaced in 1976, and then when we took over the hall, with the renewal of the Grange, we put a new roof on that. That was one of the very first things that we insisted upon. Second thing we insisted upon was restoring the furnace. The original furnace was gone. It only lasted for like 60 years, but so we put in a gas furnace a few years ago. So what did the Grange do? Well, agricultural fairs. It for many years maintained the cemetery that's across the street. That was one of our jobs. We planted flowers and trees all over town, including at the town hall, which that's a job that's been taken over by the garden club. One of the more interesting things is one of our third master of the Grange was a man named William Ann Howard. Does anybody know who William Ann Howard is?
Insurance.
William Ann Howard. Insurance company, and there's still a William Ann Howard insurance company in Easton. He was the son of Lucius Howard Jr., and they owned the farm that is now the open space at Simpson Springs. So it was a big farm. And it was a dairy farm. And William stayed on the farm from his birth until 1896, when he moved uptown. And he was already in the insurance business, but he didn't want to be just an insurance man. So he bought 250 acres of land in North Easton and opened a dairy farm. So he was, unlike many Grangers in our history, he was a farmer. He really worked this and did a great job. So great that he became a dual threat. He was one of the founders of Producers Dairy, which was one of the biggest dairy cooperatives in this part of the state. He also was one of the founders of the state dairy cooperative that supported dairy farming. He was a whiz in Grange business. He was the state secretary for 28 years. He was responsible for sponsoring 62 Granges that were founded. And he was the state master, our first state master from Easton, from 1925 to 1929. He eventually passed away in 1938. And we've had a second person who became the state master, and that is right here. This is William Howard, and this is our other guy. And some of us actually got to meet his Skinner, because he did pass away that way. He was the state master from 1985 to 1989. And that was a time when the Grange was beginning to decline here in Easton. And what we did is they worked incredibly hard to keep the Grange Hall going. And it became harder and harder as the membership shrank. And then finally, Lee Williams, Fred?
Did he have a name? Yes.
Ken Skinner.
Ken Skinner, right, thanks.
Yeah, I should speak. We should have a elaborate microphone system. I said we should have an elaborate microphone system here, but the hall doesn't provide that kind of stuff. We did provide this for you guys, so hopefully that will move us into the 21st century. Anyway, so I got to tell you guys about these people because I've talked to them, even the guy who died in 1938, because we had Ghostbusters come in to the Grange, because when the thrift store took over the Grange, there were reports that there were ghosts that were there. Okay. And some of the people became very concerned about these ghosts. One of them supposedly was very threatening, and he would stand on the stairs going down into our basement and push people. So we called in Ghostbusters, and I was master of the Grange, and we talked to them, and I explained, we're restoring the Grange. The fact that we have the thrift store there is because we need to raise money to fix up the building, and we've put over $100,000 into the building. Much of it thanks to loans from the state Grange, and we've done very, very well. The reason we did that is because of Lee Williams, another person I wanted to mention. Lee was the #1 recruiter for the Easton Lions Club for many years, and he was looking for a way to raise money for the Lions Club for their charities, and was in Florida and found out that a Lions Club there ran a thrift store. So he combined the need to boost up the Grange with the need to pay for Lions charity. Now the problem with Lee is that he was the consummate salesman, and the problem was that the members of the Grange surviving were descendants of farmers who were very suspicious of salesmen. So it took us a while to mesh the two together, and we've gone to do that. One other last thing, and the last thing is I want to mention Chester Rice Smith. Chester Rice Smith was a young boy who was raised in Unionville, pretty much across the street from where the Grange Hall is. And he became our youngest master of the Grange. He became master in 1916 when he was 22 years old.
Nice.
Okay. And he served in 1916 and 1917. And then, because he was a patriotic young man, he enlisted in World War I. He wasn't killed in the war, but he was killed by the war. He came down with the flu and died as a result of that. So we lost I would think, somebody who had a lot of potential to be highly involved in the state Grange. So over the years, we've done a lot of things, and some people will tell you, yeah, we're a supper club, but I don't believe that.
Who would say that? Who would say that?
Yeah. The big thing for us is some of the projects that we undertake, like the community garden project that we're into our second year of, and we donated a fair amount of produce last year. We're going to donate even more this year. We've given scholarships, just like we're supposed to do, and we've even supported the NRT's harvest fair and sponsored a vegetable growing competition there. We sponsored 2 big barn dances to raise money when we were first getting it started, and it would be fun to do that again. One of them was right here in the hall, and we discovered that the hall is designed for dances. The floor is a spring floor, and it's perfect. You can dance all night. So we're an active Grange. You can see that we have a fair number of members. We meet once a month. We used to meet twice a month back in the olden days, but once a month. And I expect we're going to be here for a long time. So thank you for having me. I'll take any questions you might have, but Lisa wants to present it.
Do we take questions first?
No, nobody has a question.
Does anyone have any questions for us?
I really do have a question.
question.
If DeWitt built the Grange for $1,700,
Yes.
it sounded, unless I misunderstood you, it sounded like the mortgage was for 43 years, which would have been $39.50 a year in payments.
Yes.
What?
Yeah. I think they put in a little bit of money to make some improvements. Yeah, you're right. It was 47. I actually researched that myself when I was master of the Grange, because one of the neat things about the state Grange program to do the loans is you have to provide a lot of the financial background of the Grange. So I got to research all of that. It was cool.
Oh, thank you.
See some of the old names.
But
All
I
right,
think-
Lisa. Yeah, another
Yeah,
question.
no, I just have a comment to make when you talk about money, Joan. When I was up in the archives, in 1968, the dues were 30 cents a year to belong to the Grange. Harmony Grange, 30 cents a year. Okay, so that was it.
So I think it's really appropriate. Bill and Sue and I went up to the museum, and boy, what a great take! If you're a dedicated Grange member and you're up near the North Pole where that museum is located. Rutland, Vic, yeah. It's really wonderful to spend some time there. And not only does it have archives, but it has all sorts of medals and ribbons and the story of the Grange, and it's so well maintained. So I would recommend that. And now Lisa's going to, or sing.
Yeah. While I was doing the research of the history of the song and songbook in the Grange, I just found it so incredibly interesting, and there's so much material. I tried to consolidate it as much as I possibly can, and I hope you enjoy this program because I just really learned so much myself about the history of music in the Grange. The farmer's the chief of the nation, the oldest of nobles is he. How blessed beyond others his station, from want and from envy how free. His patent was granted in Eden, long ages and ages ago. Oh, the farmer forever, 3 cheers for the plough, spade, and hoe. The Patrons of Husbandry was founded in 1867 in the wake of the Civil War in an attempt to advocate for the interests of farmers and rural communities. Early Grange leaders realized the importance of social interaction and knew music, especially singing, played a vital role in all social gatherings. Gatherings such as potlucks and dances, educational events, and town meetings all had music carefully intertwined throughout each event, making the Grange a singing organization since its early days. For more than 150 years, the Grange has published music for use during Grange meetings, rituals, and events. They have a rich heritage of song and a rich heritage of songbook, with music being published either by the Grange or by people interested in its mission. This rich heritage of song, and specifically songbook, all began with the printing of the first Grange songbook. This songbook, called Songs for the Grange, was compiled in 1873 by Caroline Arabella Hall. Born in Boston, Caroline held the office of the first national series. She was niece and assistant of Grange founder Oliver Hudson Kelly. She played a vital role in assuring that women be on equal footing with men from the first inception of the Grange movement, insisting that the Grange organization would not be successful unless an equal place was given to women. Several well-known composers from that post-Civil War period wrote music that was featured in this first Grange songbook. Composers such as Lowell Mason, born in Medfield, Massachusetts, educator and church musician who composed over 1,600 hymn tunes during his lifetime. And George F. Root, born in Sheffield, Massachusetts, composer of the famous Civil War song, The Battle Cry for Freedom. These two musicians are just a small example of the many talented composers who wrote and arranged music for that first Grange songbook. When George F. Root left his farming community at age 18, he moved to Boston with hopes of playing his flute with an orchestra. He actually went on to have a long musical career, but later in life returned to his early roots of growing up in a farming community through a different medium. He began composing songs for the Grange. One of his songs that's featured in this first Grange songbook was about an issue that farmers were dealing with at that time. That issue being monopolies controlling their farms. The suppliers, the buyers, the railroads, the transportation that carried their goods to market all threatened the survival of their farms. That vital concern is the theme of this next song, a song written by George Root called The Hand That Holds the Bread.
Brothers of the plough, come rally once again, come gather from the prairie wide, the hillside and the plain, not as in days of yore with trump of battle sound, but come and make the world respect the tillers of the ground. Awake, then awake, the great world must be fed, and heaven gives the power to the hand that holds the bread. Yes, brothers of the plough, the people must be fed, and heaven gives the power to the hand that holds the bread.
That song comes from an earlier era when the Grange movement was uniting farmers against the railroads and the suppliers in the East. In addition to uniting the farmer, many early Grange songs were about life's important values and lessons. Friendship, honesty, determination, and faithfulness were just a few of these themes expressed in song. This next song is another one written by George F. Root, which tells the story of a young man taking pride in an honest day's work.
One sultry day, a farmer's boy was hoeing in the field of corn, and anxiously had waited long to hear the welcome dinner horn. The welcome call was heard at last, and down he quickly dropped his hoe. The farmer shouted in his ear, "Hoe out your row, hoe out your row." Although the row, hard one was the row, and he was only there on hire, and though the lad had worked since dawn, and now beginning well to tire, "I can," said he, and manfully he seized again his fallen hoe. The good man smiled, now pleased to see the farmer boy hoe out his row. The lad the text remembered long, and often proved the moral well, that perseverance to the end at last will tell. Take courage then, resolve you can, and strike an earnest, vigorous blow. In life's great field of varied toil, hoe out your row. By 1880, the lack of songbooks being available to every Grange that requested them was a problem facing the National Grange Executive Committee. Therefore, a decision was made to revise and republish a new Grange songbook. This new songbook, called Glad Echoes from the Grange, was edited by American diplomat and politician James Lawrence Orr and published by the Ohio State Grange. During the 1881 proceedings of the Ohio State Grange, it was reported that there were many choice pieces of music, and the demand for it had been so great that 6,000 copies had been distributed, and they were just about exhausted. So, later in 1881, the Ohio State Grange published James L. Orr's new Glad Echoes from the Grange with 44 more songs. This songbook was sold by the Ohio State Grange for decades, but by 1915, it was discontinued. A featured composer from the new Glad Echoes of the Grange songbook was teacher, musician, and songwriter of his day, Joseph Philbrick Webster. J.P. Webster was born in Manchester, New Hampshire, and both of his grandfathers were patriots of the American Revolution. One of his most famous songs ever written was featured in the movie Gone with the Wind. The song, titled Lorena, was widely listened to and enjoyed on both sides of the Civil War. And now, from the new Glad Echoes of the Grange songbook, J.P. Webster's beautiful song called Bud and Bloom. Though the winter be cheerless and cold, and the wild winds are bowing the trees, in the promise of spring we behold, and rejoice with the birds and the bees. Bud and bloom, sweet perfume, and the fruit in its time nature yields. Bud and bloom, sweet perfume, we will hark to the call of the fields. As recorded during the 1891 proceedings of the National Grange, to keep pace with its progressive work, it was evident to the Executive Committee that the order required a new songbook with more popular songs and a higher grade of music. A contract was made with James L. Orr to edit this book under the supervision of the committee. This new songbook, Grange Melodies, contained 200 choice pieces of music and went before the order. The book met the approval of the National Grange and served a long-felt want in Grange work. This next song, If I Had But a Voice of Song, was written by the very editor of Grange Melodies. Here is James L. Orr's If I Had But a Voice of Song. If I had but a voice of song to thrill the hearts of men, I'd sing glad strains of goodness true over and o'er again. Through all the beauteous things we love, my gladsome song I'd fill, for every little thought of good crowds out some thought of ill. Although Grange Melodies had a very long run as the Grange's primary songbook, a desire for new songs emerged once again. One book to satisfy that desire was The Patron's Pride by George W. Armstrong. It was self-published in 1908
and well received by subordinate Granges. Other independently published songbooks were Grange Songster and New Grange Songster, the second being a collection of the words-only songs with the text being set to familiar tunes. A songbook was even compiled by George F. Root called The Trumpet of Reform, Songs for the Grange, the Club. During the 1925 proceedings of the convention, the National Master reported a new Grange songbook known as The Patron has been prepared. A large edition has been printed and distributed. This book has been arranged in shape so that additional material may be added as occasion may require. This new songbook was the undertaking of Mrs. Louise Taylor Rogers of Pennsylvania, an accomplished violinist who trained at the New England Conservatory of Music. She and two of her daughters performed in the 1923 National Convention. During the Pennsylvania State Grange proceedings, Mrs. Rogers announced, "The Patron is now the official songbook of the National Grange, and I wish to express my feelings of appreciation in having been permitted to perform this service for the Grange." Mrs. Rogers is mentioned by name as the recipient of a payment of $450. It's not clear, but it seems likely that the payment was for her work on The Patron. The Patron served as the Grange's primary songbook for a number of years, as well as a revised edition in 1954. Here is an inspirational farm song from The Patron, written by James L. Orr, called The Dear Old Farm. I love my home among the hills where meads and brooklets charm. How rich and pure the bliss that gilds a life upon the farm. I love the good old farm, the dear old peaceful farm. Its fields are green and its skies serene. I love the dear old farm. The most recent Grange songbook is this hardbound songbook our Grange uses today, called The Grange Songbook, published in 1983. And this is the first book to offer a CD to Grangers that perhaps have no piano, pianist, or even guitarist to serve as an accompaniment for the songs in this book. Thinking about the future of the Grange songbook, yet keeping the tradition of the importance of singing in the Grange alive, makes me wonder, is it time once again for a new Grange songbook? One with more contemporary and generationally appropriate material added to the time-tested inspirational songs and hymns of the past? Certainly something to think about. But whatever that answer may be, the importance of singing in the Grange and within our lives is invaluable and beautifully summed up by Mrs. Louise Taylor Rogers over 100 years ago. She stated, "In all ages, in all countries, in war and in peace, when men and women have been greatly stirred, they have expressed it in song. The mother croons in a lullaby to her baby. The organ peals a joyous melody at the wedding. And the choir chants solemnly at the funeral of our dead." During the last years of this late war, our nation sang as never before in its history. We came to know that singing together strengthened us, and we would have nearly failed in our hours of trial had it not been for the music expressed to us through the medium of song. The war is over, but we are passing through days of strain and stress which are to be a test of our national unity. As much now And perhaps even more than in the actual days of warfare, do we need the strengthening and uplifting effect of music. I'd like to thank you for listening to this songbook story I've just told you, which shows you just a tiny piece of the rich musical history that has existed for decades. I'd like to, oh, this doesn't like me. I'd like to leave you now with a final song appropriately titled Closing Song from the Grange Songbook. And the Grange lyrics I am about to sing were actually originally set to the music of A Perfect Day, written by Carrie Jacobs Bond. Carrie was the first woman in the United States to establish a music publishing company, and interestingly enough, published her first song in 1894. She went on to become the first female composer to earn $1 million.
Ooh.
After I finish singing Closing Song, I'd like to ask Michael to please play for you the parlor guitar arrangement of Carrie Jacobs Bond's A Perfect Day.
We are nearing the end of another day, and will long remain in our hearts. It will send each one that is here away with a joy that our meeting brought. For our Grange service means work and play, and friendships that never fade. And as we depart and go on our way, let us cherish the friends we've made.
Chocolate bar, so has anybody not put their name in that wants to enter for our little giveaway? And I also have fresh cookies over there in the water if anyone's hungry, and please take one of these chocolate flavors. It has our Grange sticker on it. Anybody want to fill up a one-time chocolate? By the way, everyone in my Grange, I'd like to introduce, she didn't get introduced this evening. This is Teresa Padeco Poole. She is from the American Legion, and she's the one that I partner with to do the blood drive every year.